Hey guys, what's up? My name's JMT and welcome back to another Survive the Night video. In this video, we're going to be making a Survivor tier list. There haven't been a lot of Survivors that have been coming out recently. Actually, the most recent Survivor that has came out from the game was the Flamingo mascot, and that was like 2 to 3 updates ago. There are currently 14 Survivors in Survive the Night, and we're going to be ranking them in a category from F to B to A to S, and that is from worst to greatest. And of course, this is going to be opinion based. I like to throw that in the intro for all of these tier list videos that I make. The tier list and the way that I sort stuff is pretty much based on my playstyle, what I like to use, and what I've seen other people use as well. Trying to make this tier list into like a more statistic based rather than just opinion, but a lot of it is opinion based. This tier list could definitely be changed in the future and change basically on other people's play styles and stuff and gear that they like to use because we're going to be ranking the survivors today based on their gear and their perk combos. Alright, kicking it off. Let's go to the F category, and the first survivor that we're putting in there is called the Detective. So the detective's gear is the magnifying glass and his perk is the relic hunter. So the detective is pretty much only used for relic finding. And to be honest with you, this is actually the survivor skin that I see being used the most, the detective skin, because if people need to go ahead and actually find relics or stuff like that, if they're hunting for XP and points, I'll see people use the detective survivor skin quite a bit. The reason he is in the F category is because I'm gonna be ranking these guys, based on how they're actually gonna compete and survive the night, not just finding relics and stuff like that. Because there's gonna be no use there to actually staying alive and doing all that stuff. So that's literally the only reason why I'm putting him in the F tier. I wouldn't use him to try to get to myself to 6 a.m. Moving on from the detective, the next survivor in the F tier category is going to be the security officer. The security officer's gear is the security camera and his perk is coward. I myself don't use the security camera at all, unless it's the merch's CCTV, because the merch's CCTV with its perk is actually a pretty good combination and it's very fun to use. It's like a fun gear to use because you can play your taunts through the camera. The coward perk dramatically decreases your breathing range and your volume while you're hiding. The security officer I can see would be good for maybe intel purposes, but if you're playing alone and stuff like that, it won't exactly be a great idea. I think what they're trying to do with the security officer is literally be a security officer. Just sit on the camera the entire time. That's the reason that these two perks are together. It's gonna make you go ahead and actually hide and use this thing. That's basically what it's telling you to do. But to be honest with you, the security camera is not a gear that I actually use a lot. I actually ranked this pretty low in my gear tier list video. It's not a gear that I think would be very beneficial towards your survival and survive the night. I don't think it's a gear choice that I would use to go ahead and actually get myself to 6 a.m. I would rather use the motion sensor over the security camera if you're going to try to patrol one area. So for that reason, we're going to be putting the security officer into the F tier. Moving on from the security officer, we're going to be going to the next survivor in the F tier, and that is going to be the operator. The operator's gear is night vision and his perk is Legman. Legman significantly increases your speed, and it's not at a point where you can pretty much notice it well, okay? Legman, we did do a video on testing perks and stuff like that, and Legman doesn't really increase your speed as much as your normal speed is. And the way that they actually pair the operator with Legman, like the night vision, it's pretty much going to be like another one of those recon or intel type characters, which of course is something that I like to use. Okay, I use the merch's night vision all the time, but because it's paired with its perk, it actually lets me know. It's more of a recon and an intel combined. It lets me know where the slasher is and I can see better. Pretty much my go-to guarantee for looping and survive the night. But with the normal night vision, not a fan of it. Okay, I don't need to go ahead and have a gear to help me see throughout the map. If you play Survive the Night enough, you don't need to go ahead and actually see around the map, okay? The slasher's red glow that he has is actually, you can see that way out brighter than having yourself night vision on, which cancels out the red glow, and then you have to go ahead and actually just find a walking object or a moving object or something like that. Night vision is not something that I think a lot of people who play this game a lot are going to be using because you're going to learn the maps more and more, and you don't need night vision to go ahead and navigate your way around the map. I think that's why they paired it with Legman. They want you to use the survivor as sort of a looping survivor. But I think there's other gear combos and perk combos that you can use to help you recon a little bit better and help you loop a little bit better than actually using this operator survivor. So for that reason, we're going to be placing him into the F tier. Moving on from the operator, we have the next survivor and the final survivor in the F tier of this tier list, and that is the male tech trooper. The male tech trooper's gear is the tech tracker and his perk is the adrenaline perk. You guys know how I am with the tracker gear, and for people who are new, guys, the tracker should be just nicknamed a trash bag, okay? I hate the thing so much. It's a gear that you get at the start of the game, and that's not the reason why I hate it, okay? There are plenty of other games where your starting gear is actually very good, okay? It's ranked way up on tier lists. the tracker tries to let you know where the slasher is, okay? And actually, it doesn't really let you know where the slasher is. That's pretty much the description of it, but I think that's completely false. The tracker pretty much just beeps when the slasher is near. And by that time, when it's beeping insanely loud and the slasher ends up picking on that audible hearing, you're pretty much done for, okay? The tracker doesn't help out too much, but it does beep from a long distance into that yellow section when the slasher is getting near, and it does tell you if your breathing is audible, which is kind of nice, okay? That's pretty much the only thing I think I like about the tracker is it tells you if the slasher can actually hear your breathing or not. But other than that, the thing is just insanely noisy to keep on, and just beeping when the slasher's near is not something I like. Okay, there's other items. Actually the merch's tracker lets you know in stud distance how far away the slasher actually is, which is pretty nice. But the normal tracker, when it just beeps and lets you know if something's near and not exactly where, it's not very helpful in my opinion. So that's why we're placing the male tech trooper into the F tier. Moving on from the F tier, we're going into the B tier. These are survivors that I think are not better than average, okay, but they are better than the F tier. Starting off in the B tier, we have the police officer. The police officer's gear is the shotgun and his perk is the jock. To be honest, this gear combo I think is insanely horrible, but the gear itself is pretty good and the perk itself is pretty good, I guess. The jock perk increases your health and your speed. The reason I think that this survivor is not into the F tier is just because he has the shotgun in general, okay? I don't see a lot of people use the jock perk. It doesn't help you with one category, like health and speed. Using this perk actually throws a little bit into both category, and it doesn't help too much. For health, it just ups you one hit, and for speed, the change is not exactly great, okay? I actually don't like speed perks. The only speed perk that I like is adrenaline, and you can pretty much tell the difference in that perk, but like the other speed perks, they don't help out too much because it's just, even though it's a little bit noticeable, it doesn't help you out at all and actually trying to go ahead and keep your distance from the slasher as it would with just having not a speed perk on. So that's why I think the police officer should be in the B tier because of the shotgun itself, but the perk does help out a little bit, especially if it has that little bit of a speed increase when you stun the slasher. That kind of helps a little bit, trying to get out of that breathing range. Other than that, these are the reasons why we're placing the police officer into the B tier. Moving on from the police officer, we have the next survivor in the B tier, and that is the female tech trooper. The female tech trooper's gear is the tech keycard, and their perk is thick skin. Thick skin significantly increases your health. Now, thick skin is actually the perk that gives you the most health in the game. I'm pretty sure thick skin makes you a 5-hit. Some people may like being a 5-hit, alright? But here's the downside to thick skin. You're going to be extremely slow. People who wear the thick skin perk, you can pretty much tell that they're using thick skin because they are just insanely slow. This is the reason we're placing female tech trooper into the B tier, because this perk. I actually don't like thick skin. I mean, unless I'm using thick skin with like a shield or something like that, then maybe, but thick skin with a tech key card? No. I don't think that's a good combo at all. I was actually thinking about placing this one into the F tier, but the reason why I did bump it up to the B tier is because the tech keycard actually is pretty helpful, especially with the new buff that I got in this recent update. So now a door could be open and you could use the keycard and it will slam the door and lock it. So it's very helpful for actually looping the slasher. Since they're taking out all these doors, door looping's pretty much gone, but using those few doors to actually go ahead and loop the slasher a bit, having this gear on helps insanely well. So that's why the female tech trooper is going to be placed into the B tier. Moving on from the female tech trooper, we are going into the next survivor in the B tier, and that is the hazmat. The hazmat's gear is the gas mask and the perk is hidden. I should be placing hazmat into the F tier. Why aren't I? Because he's wearing ghillie, and ghillie's actually insanely good. Okay, I rank a ghillie pretty high in my gear tier list because the ghillie gear permanently disables your breathing. Like if you use the ghillie gear and the slasher walks right next to you and you're hiding, he's not going to know you're in there. It just disintegrates your breathing. That's why I put hazmat to the top of the B tier, but the reason he's in the B tier, and I would have moved hazmat, I would have moved him to the S tier, okay? He has the hidden perk on. Oh, what a bummer. They destroyed this perk. Now, with the hidden perk, you have a 50% chance of being undetectable when you're hiding. It's not a 100% chance anymore, which is why I was going to throw it into the S tier. But now, since it's not a guaranteed undetectable thing, hidden perk is not a perk that's going to be used anymore, I don't think. I think a lot of people are actually going to hate this perk now. 50% chance, like I said before, is still pretty high, but that's a 50-50, and we can't just guarantee for it to land on your favor all the time. The ghillie works extremely well, okay, but the perk is not something that I should be able to go ahead and throw them into the A tier, so that's why we're going to be putting the hazmat into the top of the B tier. If they do make some positive changes with the hidden, then we could definitely throw him up a tier level, but for now, he's going to be at the top of the B tier. Moving on from the B tier, we are now going into the A tier, and starting off in the A tier, the first survivor is Survivor. Yes, his name is Survivor. I know, kind of confusing, right? Survivor's gear is the Road Flare, and his perk is Jock. Again, that Jock perk. Not a perk that I like too much, but paired with a Road Flare, actually pretty decent, okay? The Road Flare is a gear that I also ranked pretty high in my gear tier list video. To be honest, I think the Road Flare is way more better than a Stagger or a Stun. Okay, the Road Flare pretty much makes the Slasher blind, and it slows down his running quite a bit, and it lasts for quite some time because placing the Road Flare on a surface actually has it remain there, so that whole area is in its proximity is going to be a Road Flare, and the Slasher doesn't have to walk on top of the Road Flare either for this to activate. They can actually walk either around it or just be near the Road Flare, and it will still go ahead and blind them and make them extremely slow. Pairing it with a Jock perk, again, I think they did this just because they wanted to go ahead and have you use the Road Flare and have that little bit of a speed boost to get away, but they're pretty much giving you that health perk as well. It's kind of combined, like we said before, with the Jock perk, but it only increases you by a 1 hit. But for those reasons, we're going to go ahead and throw the Survivor into the A tier. Moving on from Survivor, we're going on into the next Survivor in the A tier, and that is going to be the Hunter. The Hunter's gear is the motion sensor, and his perk is Stealth. Great combination, in my opinion. I think this is very good. Some people may throw Hunter into the S tier, okay? But not me, unfortunately, because I don't like using the motion sensor. However, there are some people out there who are extreme gods with a motion sensor, alright? But there's very few, because you got to learn the map and you got to learn your looping strategy in maps, okay, plural, by the way, for this gear to be extremely useful for you. Motion sensor pretty much beeps when the Slasher is near it, and it lets you know where the Slasher is, if you remember where you placed the motion sensor. And having this paired with the Stealth perk, very good. The Stealth perk decreases your breathing range and volume. I just made a breathing perk video. There's actually the video before this one was the breathing perk video, and we went ahead and tested all of the breathing perks. And Stealth was all right, okay? This, in fact, does not just decrease your range, or it just does not decrease your volume. It decreases both of them. Pretty much the range is the range from you to the Slasher, when it actually becomes audible, your breathing, that is. And the volume is how loud your breathing actually is. So decreasing both of these helps out quite a bit, especially when you're going to be looping around with your motion gear. So that's the reason why I think that this Survivor in the future could definitely go ahead and be placed into the S tier. But for right now, since I don't use him that much, we're going to be keeping him into the A tier. Moving on from the Hunter, we got the next Survivor in the A tier, and the last Survivor in the A tier, and that is the Film Nerd. The Film Nerd's gear is the Tape Recorder, and his perk is Shallow Breath. The Tape Recorder, oh my, okay. Remember in the tournament that I was talking about when we made a gear tier list video and we were talking about the Tape Recorder? Dude, the Tape Recorder was legit saving people in the Survive the Night tournament. It was making the Slasher not get a point because people who were using the Tape Recorder were tricking the Slasher really well. So the reason why I'm putting this Survivor into this tier list is pretty much for the Tape Recorder itself. Now, of course, the perk that is paired with the Film Nerd is Shallow Breath, and this is one of the better of the breathing perks because it decreases your volume quite a bit. But it's to the point where your range is pretty much decreased as well, because if the volume is decreased, then the range is pretty much decreased because the volume isn't as high as it should be. Being paired with a Tape Recorder and Shallow Breath, you can pretty much become a ghost, okay? If you want to lead the Slasher into locations where you're not actually there, or lead them into locations where it's off of your loop path and you have Shallow Breath equipped where they can't hear you place it, or they can't actually hear you in certain areas as they would without a Shallow Breath perk on, I think that this combination is pretty godly. But of course, I don't use the Tape Recorder, and I'm not trying to place these Survivors because like, oh, well, I don't use it, so we should place it into these categories. No, what I'm trying to say is that since I'm not using it, A lot of other people probably aren't going to be using it as well because I play the game quite a bit, and it's not a gear that I would go ahead and choose if I was playing with other types of gear in the game. So it's not just my standpoint, we're basing it off of a lot of people's standpoint and using me as an example of just people who play the game a lot. But of course, everyone has their preferences, and for that reason, I'm going to be placing the film nerd into the A tier. Moving on from the A tier, we are now going into the S tier. These are the survivors I think are the best in the game. These are going to be the survivors I think that you should play, and for these specific reasons, let's hop into the S tier. The first survivor in the S tier is going to be the Redneck. The Redneck's gear is the Monster Trap, and his perk is Spare Batteries. Spare Batteries, I think, is one of the better, or maybe even best perks for gear rechargement. With Spare Batteries, it dramatically increases your gear recharge while your lamp is on. A lot of people like to use Fear Battery, okay? But there is a downside to that. Fear Battery does recharge faster than Spare Battery. However, you gotta be near the slasher for the Fear Battery to actually work. That's why it's called Fear. And sometimes that can be extremely risky, especially if you don't have a gear on that would help you with your breathing, or a perk with your detection, but of course you're using Fear Battery. Spare Batteries would probably be the go-to perk for me if I were to go ahead and actually use a gear recharge thing, because you can just turn your lamp on whenever you want, and it recharges your gear insanely fast. I use Spare Batteries all the time when I had the hammer gear on, just placing down the barricade and then just turning my lamp on. Goes ahead and actually recharges the gear right then and there. And having this equipped with a Monster Trap is very good. This is sort of a setup that is related to the Merch's Bear Trap and the Trap Restock perk that goes along with it. Going ahead and being able to actually recharge your traps when tripped and placing more at once because it does have a gear recharge rate. That is sort of what I think that this combo is going for. You can go ahead and actually get more of your traps out and faster, and go ahead and place your traps on your specific loop path, or even off of your loop path as well if you want to try to lure the slasher away a little bit, thinking that you're actually over in that area. But people who do use the traps, I think, tend to place them in their loop path. And basically, guys, a loop path, if you don't know by this point, is a path that people are going to be taking when the slasher ends up finding them. They're going to go ahead and actually use this path to get away, or just loop the slasher into this continuous path where they can't be catched. In placing traps on that path and having a gear recharge perk to place more traps on that path is going to be very helpful, which is why I'm going to be throwing the Redneck into the S tier. Moving on from the Redneck, the next survivor in the S tier is going to be the Question Mark Man, okay? Triple Question. Triple Question's gear is the Ghillie, and his perk is Elusive. This survivor is basically becoming a ghost, okay? The gear, just having Ghillie, throws him up quite a bit. I think Ghillie is the most perfect starting gear in Survive the Night. If people really don't know what to use right away, just throw on Ghillie, okay? It helps you out so much in learning the game in general. Ghillie actually helps out quite a bit for people in trying to make a problem-solving method and Survive the Night. It helps you find those hiding spots. It helps you know when and where to actually activate gear. So I think Ghillie is amazing, and this is why I'm going to be throwing him into this S tier. But he is combined with Elusive, and Elusive reduces your breathing range and increases your speed. We did test Elusive in the breathing perk video, and it wasn't the greatest breathing perk, but it's still proved a difference. If you don't have a breathing perk on, it takes about 5 seconds for the slasher to come get you. But with the Elusive perk, it only takes 4 seconds for the slasher to go ahead and actually get to you. The way I tested my breathing perks, by the way, was seeing how far the slasher could actually reach the survivor in breathing range, because I think testing that is more beneficial than testing volume itself, because volume does affect range because it's going to be quieter. So we tested in seconds to see how long it would take the slasher to reach the survivor in its breathing range distance. Pretty much right when you hear the breathing, that's where we went ahead and tested from start to finish from the slasher to the survivor, and Elusive was only a second decrease. So not the best breathing perk, but with Ghillie, could be better. Okay, but it's a good combo, and it's a good survivor, and that's why he is in the S tier. Moving on from Triple Question Mark, we're going into the next survivor, and that is going to be the Flamingo Mascot, the newest survivor added to this game. Okay, the Flamingo Mascot's gear is the camera, and his perk is the battery. The battery perk increases your speed, health, and it massively increases your gear recharge when you're near the slasher. So the battery perk is pretty much throwing Flamingo Mascot into this S tier, okay? The perk is actually pretty good. Now, since it's only increased, and it's not like dramatically or massively or significantly increased, when it increases your health, it's only going to be a +1 for a hit, that is. And with your speed, it's not going to be very noticeable, and it's not going to help you actually outrun the slasher as much as it would with, not even wearing a speed perk. However, it does massively increase your gear recharge, and that is something that is perfect when you're using the camera. So when you're near the slasher, it's actually going to help out quite a bit to go ahead and recharge this specific gear in general, because it's used towards the slasher. The slasher has to be in range with you to actually go ahead and use the camera. So having this perk battery paired with the camera, I think is going to be pretty good. For those reasons, we're going to go ahead and throw the flamingo mascot into the S tier. And the last survivor in the S tier of this tier list video is going to be Chad. Chad has an insane combination, okay? His gear is card keys and his perk is born in a barn. This combo now, right? The gear and the perk, both are made for doors. Born in a barn is a perk that I used in the start of the game a lot, okay, before I started getting everything else. The Born in a Barn perk increases your health, and if you use a nearby door, it will periodically stagger the slasher. So, pretty much what that's saying is that if you are looping with the slasher throughout doors and you use Born in a Barn, if you close the door near a slasher, it's going to stagger him. You're pretty much hitting the slasher with the door, okay? He's going to be stunned for a little bit in his place. Now, having Born in a Barn perk paired with a key gear, it's not something I actually thought about before, but I think it could be pretty awesome and pretty well used if people are using this Survivor quite a bit. Because again, with this key buff that was just recently added in this update where you can go ahead and actually slam open doors as well and it instantly locks them, I think that's going to help out quite a bit when you're using this type of looping character. I think this character is pretty much looping, okay? His definition is going to be loop. I think the key gear is a gear that is pretty much made just for looping, okay? People don't just randomly lock doors. I mean, some people do, but if you're using this to like your advantage or actually using it for, a situation, then no. But this combination is something that I think could be used pretty well. And this combination is something that I haven't even thought about before, but since it is pretty much a looping combination, that's the reason why I'm going to be throwing Chad, aka Loop, into the S tier, the top of the S tier. So that's my Survivor tier list, okay? Again, all opinion based. There are going to be many people who have specific changes made to this tier list. But if you guys made it this far in the video, I want you to pause this video right now, go into the comment section, and type in "I'm a real one." Go ahead and comment that because I want to know people who actually went ahead and watched the full video. Also, if you guys like this tier list video, go ahead and leave a like. It helps support me quite a bit, more than you guys can realize, okay? Thank you so much for the support, by the way. I also want you guys to comment any changes that you think should be made to this tier list video, if you guys have any changes, that is. But that's going to be it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and peace out.